Marie Diaz has traveled the globe and has met, interviewed, and has uncovered methods used by some of the most successful people in the world. She's a published author, global keynote speaker, philanthropist, and entrepreneur. She's been recognized by D Magazine and Ernst Young as one of the 38 top entrepreneurs in Dallas, Texas, and on a national level was honored and recognized in 2014 by Inc. 500 magazine as the #1 top fastest growing HR strategy firm in the nation, #3 fastest growing women-owned business in the nation, and #26 top fastest growing business in the nation. Amongst other publications, she has been consistently recognized for the past 2 decades.
Hello everyone, my name is Marie Diaz. I am the Chief Visionary for CEO Club's Impact Worldwide, where our legacy is helping you create your legacy. Today, I have a special guest, and everyone knows that what's dear to my heart is entrepreneurship. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the entrepreneur mindset. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to have an entrepreneur mindset. So with that, let me welcome Scott Murray. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Now, Scott Murray, he's an entrepreneur today for the past decade, right?
Yep.
10,
15 years. Yep.
10, 15 years. But for the last 3 decades, he was the sports director and anchor for NBC, both in DFW and Washington, D.C., correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay, great. Dallas is better than Washington, right?
Actually, most of that, about 90% of that was here. I just spent 1 year in Dallas, or in Washington, and then was given the opportunity to come here and thought, you know what, I don't want to see snow anymore.
Oh my gosh.
So I decided to come to Texas.
I'm that way.
Seen it a couple of times, but not like Washington or not like upstate New York, where I was originally from. My mother's from Alabama, my dad's from Nova Scotia. So Rochester's kind of right between the two of them. I tell people that I'm from Mayberry RFD without the drawl. So,
well, I'm kind of like you.
Yeah.
I don't. I like to see snow on the TV.
Yeah, understand.
Something you fly to, maybe fly back,
yeah,
but
absolutely. No.
Well, Scott, gosh, the entrepreneur mindset. Let's talk a little bit about that, because you not only work for corporate America, but I want to talk a little bit about your story, because you have an amazing story.
Okay, sure.
Right from college, we're going to start from the very beginning, because he's got some fascinating stories along the way. We're going to keep it clean, though.
Okay. Okay.
But he came from corporate America, and he always had that entrepreneur spirit. But it wasn't until maybe 20, 30 years later you decided to ignite a little bit on jumping into that entrepreneur and ownership type of role. But he practiced the entrepreneur spirit within what he was doing with his work. And so a lot of that comes from having passion. Wouldn't you say that?
No question. And I was taught that by my parents. I had 2 of the greatest role models on the face of the earth. A lot of people say, oh, my dad was this, oh, my mom was this, oh, she was good, she was great. But my parents were my 2 greatest role models. And I lost my mom last year, lost my dad about 15 years ago. But they were just always, there from the time I was, decided that when I was 7 years old and my best friend died of leukemia. Mm-hmm. And I vowed then I was going to be a pediatrician. And that's what I went to college to become. And I was 3 weeks away from going to Duke to medical school, and had a chance to go into television and never made it to medical school. But that's probably the main reason that I do all the charity work, in particular with children in medicine, that I do every day.
But tell us a little bit, I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, because don't kill me, but...
All right, go for it.
But you were in your second year of college, and you heard something on the radio.
Actually, I was in my first year. I was 17 years old. It was October, November of my freshman year. I was I was studying to be a doctor. I was in pre-med, and I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden I hear this guy on the radio go, "How would you like to make millions of dollars, travel to millions of locations, meet millions of girls? You too can be a disc jockey." And I go, "Oh, gee, that's..." So I pulled in to try out for this job. I just thought it was going to be a fun gig when I was in college, but I never heard back from them. A couple months went by. And actually, it was before Christmas, and it wasn't until after Christmas, in January, I got a call. And the guy, I recognized his voice, and he said, "Is Mr. Murray there?" And I said, "No, sir, he's not." He said, "Isn't this Mr. Murray?" I said, "You want my father or you want me?" And he said, "No, I think we want you." And then he told me he was Nick Nixon, and that was the disc jockey that I listened to as a kid growing up. So I said, hello, Mr. Nixon. He said, how are you? He said, good. He said, we enjoyed listening to your tape. Sorry we didn't get back to you sooner, but we had 517 applications for that job. I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah, well, we had it on the air all the time, so a lot of people showed up. But we've whittled the list down to 18, and you're one of the 18 if you're still interested. I said, yes, sir, I certainly am. So I told him what I was doing, and I was at the University of Rochester and studying to be a pediatrician. And he said, well, why don't you come down and we'll make another air check? And I said, okay, well, cut to the chase, I got the job. So I worked from 1 till 6 in the morning my freshman and sophomore years in college as a disc jockey. Called myself Doc Scott, the sound surgeon. And,
But was because your passion, they knew, was to become a pediatrician.
Absolutely.
Right? So at that moment in time, you didn't think that you were going to change course.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. This was just a fun gig, and I loved disc jockeys, and I loved listening to the radio when I was growing up, and that was it. So
and
this
you
was
could travel and meet all the girls you wanted.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of neat. It really was, and then I got a call one day from the general manager at one of the television stations. Is this Mr. Murray? I said, yes, sir, it is. And he said, do you mind stopping? You ever done any TV commercials? And I said, no, sir. He said, well, you look about 10 years old. You could play the part of a little kid. We've got a couple of car dealers that are looking for somebody. And so I went in and I did my first one was, hey, Mom, Dad got the new car. And that was I remember that like it was yesterday. I called my folks to say it's going to be on TV. And so that was kind of cool. And I was 17, 18 years old.
Okay.
And so that was kind of neat.
Okay, so you go from getting this opportunity, and the opportunity, how did it appear to you? Was it because, well, I understand that in the car you called, but then you have another opportunity because of your personality and your attitude towards the job or towards the work. What happened there?
Well, I got a call from that same general manager. He liked what I did in the TV commercials, and he called me and he said, I'd like to see you in my office. And I said, oh gosh, I guess I lost my job doing the commercials. And he sat me down and he opened up his desk drawer and he hands me this little black thing. And he said, I said, what's that, Mike? And he said, it's a fake mustache, Scott. I need to give you a little age so you don't look like my baby-faced paper boy. He said, you have the look and the voice of a news anchor. And I said, oh gosh, Mike, I'm honored. Thank you very much. But I want to be a pediatrician. I think that's what I want to do. I don't want to cover, I said, I didn't want to cover blood and guts is what I told him. And he said, no, I understand. I said, but if you got a job in sports, I said, I eat and sleep sports, played a lot of sports, memorized the back of every football and baseball card I ever had. And I said, that'd be great. He said, are you a good writer? And I said, well, my degree's in psychology, but I had a minor in biology and English. And I was a pretty good writer. And so he said, I want you to get fixed up with the news director and see how you write. And maybe he could send you out in a couple of stories with the crew. And I said, okay. So that's what I did. I went out in a couple of stories. They liked what I did, and they put a couple of my stories on the air. And I was still in college. And then they needed, one time they called and they said, Scott, would you like to come in and anchor? The guys are going to be gone. One guy was out of town. The other guy had the weekend off or whatever. So I went in and worked on a Saturday afternoon, did the early and late news. And I was, I think, 18, 19 at that time. Okay. That was my sophomore or junior year. And,
so would you say that opportunity is there, typically all around us,
right?
But how that opportunity appears is really a mindset. And when you think about a mindset of positive, then you see things for what they are as opportunities, and the attitude helps to get you there.
Absolutely.
But if you don't see the opportunity and you're closed-minded, then that opportunity goes away.
It does. There's no question about that. But, I always had an open mind. My parents always were talking about being positive, positive, productive, passionate, and with purpose. And just stay focused, be positive and productive every day. Be kind, courteous, and respectful. And I can hear my parents saying, I used to go out in the backyard. My dad would throw me I did the same thing with my son. Go out in the backyard and throw that football or shoot me ground balls, and I'd bobble it or drop it. And I go, oh, Dad. He said, because you can. Pick it up because you can. You can catch it because you can. Because you can. I told my own son that, because you can. Anything you want to do.
Right.
And every morning you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror. Mom and Dad would tell me, look in the mirror. That's the person that's going to control you, who you are, and what you're all about that day. They were telling me that when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Just believe in yourself, respect yourself, and be yourself.
That's what you got to do. My mom was one of my biggest influencers, but she used to let me watch this one show I know this is going to age me, but I don't know if any of you guys ever watched HR Puffin Stuff. Right? It was
I never even heard of it. But okay.
But it was great.
No, I didn't watch much TV, believe it or not, growing up.
Really?
No, I didn't watch a lot of television. Watch sports, but that was about it.
Okay, so let's fast forward then a little bit. So attitude was something that progressively helped you move into some of these positions.
Oh, absolutely.
But then you had to make a decision. You
Well, I
loved
did,
radio.
Well, here's what happened. I graduated and was getting ready to go to med school, and I'm sitting in the studio, which is no bigger than this little stage here, and there was the bat phone, which was a big bright red phone right here, and it would flash instead of ringing. So if you were on the air, it didn't make any noise. So I picked it up. I said, "Hello, Scott, where are you?" I said, "Mike, what's the matter?" It was the general manager at the television station. "Jim just fired Eddie. I don't have a sports anchor for the early and late news." And I said, "Oh gosh." So I said, "Okay." And so he said, "Go home and get a suit on and get here." And he said he'd already called George, who was the GM at the radio station. And I said, "Okay." And I said, "I've never done this before, put it together. We'll have it together. You just get home and come on in." So long story short, I went over, did the early and late news. And the next day I was offered a job in television. So I never went to medical school. But it's funny how things happen. But so
30 years later,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and so
you were the anchor for 30 years.
Yeah, and so I was in Rochester, and then in Albany, New York, for a very short period of time, and then was called and was said, "Is Mr. Murray?" He said, "Yes." And it was a fellow named Jim. He said, "I work with NBC. I'm a headhunter." And he said, "I go around the country." And he said, "I saw you on the air last night. Do you have a contract?" And I said, "Well, no, sir, I don't, actually." And I said, "I'm just going, And he said, well, we'd be interested. Bryant Gumbel is leaving Los Angeles. He's going to be going to the Today Show. And we need somebody to replace him. He's been doing sports in LA, and we need somebody to go to California." And I said, "Oh, you're kidding." And that's when I had just taken that day, the moving van took off, and I was standing at the window watching the movie when the phone rang, and it was this fella. And I said, "I'd just taken a job in Albany." And I said, "So I need to fulfill that obligation." But I said, "I'm really not crazy about having my family grow up in Los Angeles. But I said, if you'd like to give me a call down the road, I'd love to talk to you. That'd be great." And 6 weeks later, they called me and said, "Would you like to go to Washington, D.C.? And I said, "Yes, sir, done deal." And so, matter of fact, I was pulling out some papers just the other day. It's kind of coincidental, but it was a picture of me on the front page of the newspaper in Albany, and it said, "Murray." I'm trying to remember the headlines, but basically comes home for summer vacation, leaves after 6 weeks, headed for our nation's capital. And it was a picture of me, and so, but the station was very nice. I went in and talked to the general manager. I said, "I hate to say this, but I just got offered a job at NBC in Washington, D.C. And he said, "We ought to take it." I said, "Do you mind?" He said, "No, we'll work it out. You need to be there." So I went there, and it was a great
Well, how
opportunity.
great is that you went to your
Well, that was the year of the Miracle on Ice. Remember that hockey game? I was at that game in Lake Placid. So that's when I started to cover everything. And I took both my parents, and they were like, and this is my dad, who was concerned that I hadn't gone to medical school. And so I took him every
whether you
place.
could make money.
Yeah, I
as
took him every
anchor.
place. I took him to the World Series. I took him to the Super Bowl. Took him to the Olympics.
Well, speaking of that,
So-
I mean, I was just looking at this, and you went from, let's see, you've interviewed U.S. presidents to U.S. Opens, the World Series to the World Cup, the Olympic Games, and 35 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. It's been great.
So you've met some great people.
Yeah, I was just in Phoenix, a couple of weeks ago. This was my 41st Super Bowl, and most of those were to cover. But the last 10 or 12 years, after I retired from doing the news every night, I was asked to. They'd seen my first book, and the fella in Minnesota that created Taste of the NFL, which brings in a Hall of Fame player from each of the 32 teams, and then a big time chef. Kent Rathbun here in Dallas had been very involved with that, and so he said, "Hey, I saw your book. Would you write our history?" So I did it with all the Gallo Wine Company and everybody that was involved with this, and wrote a book. And they liked the book, so they said, would you come MC this year, every year? So I did that for 12 years with Miss America. I co-hosted it with the new Miss America every year.
Always with the girls.
Yeah. So did that, and that was a lot of fun. So we'll continue to go to the Super Bowl and do that every year.
Well,
and MC Taste of the NFL.
That's fantastic. And just
this year was out here. Can I do a
know.
plug? I was asked, I do a radio show that goes to 840 stations every Saturday morning across the country. And it's called Journey Through Sports and Life. But I was also, my son and I, who's my business partner, we'll get to in a minute, what happened is I was asked to come on out there and MC this big red carpet thing we had for this. Did you all happen to see the Perfect 10 the night before the Super Bowl? Did anybody see that? It's the 10 players in the history of football that have won a Heisman Trophy and then gone on to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There's only 10. Roger Staubach and Tony Dorsett are the two from here. Earl Campbell from the Oilers is also one of them. And Tim Brown, who was born and raised here, wide receiver, went to Notre Dame, played with the Oakland Raiders. He's one of them too. But there are 10 guys. And so we put that together. NFL didn't realize that statistic, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Heisman didn't. So my son and 4 other people and myself, the 6 of us, put it together, and we were the executive producers. And so Fox said, we'd like that. So they aired it. It's a 90-minute movie special.
That's exciting.
So we got a call 2 days ago that, Scott, they think this has got potential to win an Emmy this year. So I said, oh, fantastic. So yeah,
congratulations.
Cool. So we're really excited about that. So
yeah,
please. So,
congratulations.
So that's the other reason I was in Phoenix for the Super Bowl.
So, I mean, that's really exciting. I think opportunity, I go back to opportunity kind of feeds when you're on the right track or on a path to excellence, and then just have the right attitude.
Right.
Because it's not really what happens to you, it's kind of how you handle it. I mean, that's what my mother used to tell me.
Well said. Totally agree. Totally agree.
And as long as you have that attitude, you can make a positive out of anything. And entrepreneurship, I often say, I think we developed the phrase failing forward, because that's what we do. We fail forward. We don't think of anything as a negative. We just kind of look at it and say, okay, that didn't work. Let's hop to something different.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So I want to relate that a little bit to the basics, because a lot of times having a baseline in business is very important, because if you don't know where your numbers are, you don't know what you're doing, really. And if you're growing, then you're growing without knowing what you're doing. So just imagine what you could be doing if you understood and measured the numbers. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and I specifically say numbers because the number one business, I think, in the world is sports, because they measure to the person and they measure it to the nth degree, and they actually put it all over the media, right? So can you imagine if companies did that? We'd be violating all kinds of rules.
Probably.
But I guarantee you we'd have more higher performers, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the performer themselves are measuring themselves, but they also are seeing it all over the media.
And it's accountability. Every one of those performers is, absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that, because you've interviewed and talked to a lot of athletes from the beginning to when they were drafted to them being a Hall of Famer.
Well, and you got a chance. It's funny you mentioned that, Marie, because you have an opportunity to see, even, well, here, let me back up. If it's a rookie and he comes on board, if you heard a lot about him and what he did in college, or he was a potential for a Heisman Trophy or something like that, he's a first or second round pick, you go, oh, well, okay, he's going to make, but you always wonder about what he's really going to be like. I MC the Doak Walker National Running Back Award every year, which is the top collegiate running back every year. It's the Heisman for a running back. And the same thing in Fort Worth, they have the Davy O'Brien National Quarterback Award, named after Davy O'Brien, who won the Heisman Trophy in '38. Doak Walker won the Heisman Trophy in '48. Both are, well, Davy is not in the Hall of Fame, but Doak Walker is. And so, and he's one of those 10 fellas we referred to a minute ago. But my point is when I was talking to the Doak Walker recipient, Bijan Robinson, the kid from UT, I was very impressed with him, with everything he wants to be a part of in the pros and what have you. But the thing that I was most impressed, and this is what always stands out to me, is how just focused and kind and respectful and really just like that. Unlike, if you could have heard what he said in his acceptance speech Friday night at SMU, you'd have gone, whoa. I even got up afterwards and I said, Bijan, by the way, is going to be running for office in November. And the whole place broke up, but it was true. He was just over the top. So he's going to do well. He's going to make it. And you know the ones that really kind of stand out. And those are the ones that I always, whether it was football, baseball, basketball, whatever it might be, you knew the ones that were really, really on top of things.
But that's a good point. I mean, a lot of times rookies come out, I mean, they're sharp. They did as well as they did in college. They were, they had scouts out to find them. But once they change a location, let's say, and they go someplace else, they're not always as successful as someone had thought they
Absolutely.
could be.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes the attitude within themselves and that fire to ignite within them, so that way they can push forward through maybe a little bit of drama, maybe a little bit of people saying they're not going to make it, of that.
It's believing in yourself, but it's relationships too.
Right.
The relationships, I very quickly, I don't know how we are on time here, but very quickly, one of the things that I give in my my keynote, creating champions of change through a culture of civility. And one of the verticals that you get there is courage, having courage. And I remember Troy Aikman coming here in 1989. Jerry Jones had just bought the team, the legendary Tom Landry, had been there for the first 29 years, but now you got a new head coach, Jimmy Johnson. Well, who's he? Never been in the NFL. But people knew of him 2 years prior, won a national championship when he was at the University of Miami. So, okay, he's got some good credentials. Knew Jerry Jones. They both played on the championship team in Arkansas in 1964. But the Cowboys picked Troy Aikman, not as the #1 draft pick for just the Cowboys, but in the entire NFL draft. This is huge. He's the guy. Well, we get to training camp, and what happens? Relationships. You recall that it was Jimmy Johnson that had that national championship? Who was his quarterback? A guy named Steve Walsh. Where's Steve Walsh? Didn't even get drafted in April. There's a supplemental draft in June. Jimmy said, I'd like to get him as maybe a backup for us. Well, we get to training camp, and who's getting all the reps? Walsh, not Aikman. He's the #1 pick overall in the NFL draft. And he's taking a back seat to this guy. Relationship. The guy that Jimmy trusted, the guy that he believed in, was Steve Walsh. He didn't know Troy Aikman, just knew of him. And so it went through the season. Cowboys finished 1-15, the only game they won. Sunday night, RFK Stadium, Washington, D.C. Who's the quarterback that game? Steve Walsh. Aikman was injured. So then at the end of the season, Troy's kind of like this. And he told me this years later when we were doing a radio show together. I said, what'd you think about it? I said, I would think that a lot of guys would say, do I want to play this game? And he said, trust me, that went through my head. It was tough. But I knew I had to have a relationship with Jimmy Johnson. He got that relationship, and guess who was gone the next year? Steve Walsh. And who took the Cowboys from 1-15 to 7-9 to 13-3 to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years before anybody knew who Tom Brady was. I mean, that's what it's all about, relationships.
So and that's believing fantastic.
That's what it's all about.
So I often say that, you've got to have the persistence, the courage to make it through some of those difficulties, the grit to make sure that those little thoughts that come into the brain, you have the attitude to kind of get it erased. So that's a great example with Troy Aikman.
No question about it. And never giving up.
He's one of my favorites.
Oh, well, Troy and that's, one of the C words. And when I talk about civility, courage, commitment, character, compassion, not confrontation, but conversation. And we've lost the ability to do that now in our world. And you talk about courage, and that was Troy. He stuck with it. But commitment. Nolan Ryan, May 1st, 1991, 7th no-hitter. The guy that's closest to that, Sandy Koufax, he's got 4. And so Nolan finishes the game. We're all out there doing live shots. Everybody's having a great time. 11:30, it's time to leave and go home, for Pete's sake. The news is over. And I said to my photographer, come on, let's cut through the clubhouse, because I got my car out there in the players' lot. He said, yeah, me too. We started walking through. I said, who's that? He said, I don't know. Somebody in there? So I walk around by the workout room. Here's a guy on a stationary bicycle. He got a Texas Rangers t-shirt on, a cap, and a pair of shorts. And I look at it, I said, oh my God. I said, Kerry, it's Nolan. Now, all the kids, I'm sure, that played in that game are out, they're going to tell their grandkids and their kids, I played in that 7th no-hitter, that never get in that 7th game when Troy got Nolan got the no-hitter. And I said, let's go. So I walk in, I go, Nolan, what are you doing in here? You ought to be home with Ruth and the kids celebrating like all the other guys are. And he said, oh, Scott, thanks so much. I appreciate it, but I can't. And you got to remember, Nolan at this time is 44 years old. 44 years old. And I said, what are you doing
That's
in
not
here?
old.
Yeah, well, for a baseball player, it's old.
Just wanted to clarify that.
So I said, what are you doing? He said, well, Scott, I pitch in 4 days. I got to be ready. I can't let my teammates down. I can't let my teammates down. I got to be ready. Come on.
So it's the attitude. It goes back to the attitude.
That's what him.
Failing forward as an entrepreneur mindset.
Commitment. And those are that's the people you want to surround yourself that have that trifecta, the T's. Trustworthy, truthful, transparent. Those are the people you want around you.
Well, it's so important what you just said about make sure you surround yourself with people who are like-minded. And then, I talk about going into new rooms because sometimes the people that got you here don't get you there. It's not a selfishness. It's really about attitude. And it's easier for someone to bring you down than it is for them to bring you up if you're in the wrong room.
No question.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time.
Okay.
I could talk to you like forever. You have so many stories. But I do want to talk bring up one thing because I want to go back to the numbers because you bring up something that's so important, and that is the numbers of the athletes from the time that they are a rookie to the time that they're retiring.
Right.
So what would you tell, and you're an entrepreneur today, so what could you tell the audience and to our listeners about how they, obviously you can't put everyone's numbers on the screen to measure performance, but how can you help others talk to and think about, know your numbers? Because I constantly, when I'm working with entrepreneurs, I'm focused on think of the exit first. So therefore, as you're building your plan, you know how to exit. But it's still a baseline that you're having to figure out. So what could you tell the audience about really measure? You cannot manage what you cannot measure. So how can they not take it to that degree? We don't want any lawsuits, but to a degree that they are excited about their rookies coming in, about whoever their key players are in the middle that got them to a certain degree, and then the ones that they possibly need to retire.
And I don't know if I'm going to answer your question the way you'd like me to answer in this respect. If I'm not, please interrupt me. But the analogy I can give you is put myself in that situation. I know what it was like when I decided to leave television.
Okay.
And I had to take all my knowledge and all my ability of what I had done, figure out, is this a good move for me, financially and everything's, is this the move I want to make? And the reason I made that move is because my son had graduated from Baylor University, and he said, Dad, you're speaking at thousands and thousands and hundreds and whatever of nonprofits, you're emceeing or speaking. And he said, why don't we start our own AV company? And we could do the AV, we could do the videos. You're making videos every day. Make videos for whatever, for nonprofits, for corporations. So we did that. We created Murray Media World. And it was great. It was a learning experience for me. But the people that when we brought in, I tried to set the tone with what I had taught my son growing up, but also what I had learned in television, and took all the positives and negated the negatives, and just, this is what we want to do. We're going to be a part of this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And just, again.
But you had to have that mindset of when to leave, because I think athletes have that. You mentioned age. There's a certain age for each sport.
Well, I was a little premature from that standpoint. I was leaving early, but I thought that's okay, because then I'm still ready to go, and I can kind of take all the knowledge that I've got here and kind of bring it over here, and then take advantage of some of the things that we had done in television and put them into work here. And we've done that throughout. Heck, I'll brag on us. I do a lot of military stuff. I was asked to go to Normandy on the 70th anniversary of D-Day. I said, can I bring my son? He can shoot that. We're with 24 World War II vets. We went to Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium, and back to France, and put this together with these fellas all in their 90s and where they were in World War II. Got it back, got it on television, documentary. We both won an Emmy. I'd won some at Channel 5. To win an Emmy with my son going to Normandy on the 70th, that's the highlight of my professional career. Nothing will ever top it. We were asked to go to Pearl Harbor on the 75th, did the same thing. That's what we've been able to do. And then the pandemic comes. We didn't have a dime from the day we did the Davey O'Brien National Quarterback Award in February until the week after Christmas, because everything shut down. We're in the business of like right here, of having groups come together, events disappeared. So what did we do? And so we just got as creative as we could. And let's try this. Let's try this.
Well, that is so.
It's
I love it because you get a chance to do the next stage in your life,
absolutely.
the next chapter.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming
you're
out
very
here
welcome.
and talking. I think it was very valuable because when we think of not only as an entrepreneur, you kind of made the switch. You had different focuses at different points in your life, and so time is a limiting belief as to when you can jump into entrepreneurship. But what I think my takeaway is that it's not just that you're measuring and balancing life. You talked a little bit about your family, but it's also the attitude that you have to have to go forward.
Totally.
And be flexible.
I could show them the Leadership America thing. Do you want me to show the other creed?
We're going to close with that.
Okay. That's good because I was going. But it makes a difference
for sure.
When
I do want to talk about one. He has this saying that I totally love, and so I'm going to say that real quick because I want to bring up one other person real quick, and we're running a little bit out of time, but. I love this saying, and for the life of me, I cannot memorize it, so I have this block. But it says, live your life as a go-getter, share your life as a go-giver. How fabulous is that? So let's give Scott
I got that from my parents because my mom used to be a go-getter. Get out there, but don't forget the other people. Make a difference.
So let's give Scott a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to have him close us in a minute, but real quickly, I want to bring up, if you've noticed my jewelry here, one of our entrepreneurs, our CEO Club's Impact Leaders, she started a company. She's from Brazil. And I wanted to just give her a quick highlight because entrepreneurship isn't easy. And so she's been here for a year. So if I can have Marta come up. So Marta, just 1 minute. We're running out of time, but I just wanted to introduce you. Please do a one-liner on your company real quick.
Okay, my name is Marta Schwind. I'm the owner of 100% Brazil. I import Brazilian stones, Brazilian crystals, semi-precious. And they all have a meaning. So not only is good for your day by day to wear something not too flashy, but it has a meaning because each one of us, we have a goals. We set our goals for the day, goals for a certain period of time, and they are all on the Bible. They appear 38 times on a Bible, and each one has a meaning. For example, Marie, today she's wearing an amethyst. An amethyst is great because it suits irritability. It calms you down in moments of fear or anxiety. That's not your case, but because I knew she would wear like a beautiful purple. And then I thought, well, it will match her outfit and plus enhances her how can I say, to be confident. So I think all of us, we will benefit from crystals at some point on career booster, like a tiger eye. So I always wear a piece because they can represent something that you want to achieve in your life, like a prosperity, abundance. So there is nothing wrong.
So you have
with
like
those.
all the different colors, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. It's important to me. I believe in entrepreneurship, and there's not one thing that we don't use today that was not developed by an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, 90% of all entrepreneurs will fail their first year. So with CEO Clubs, our goal is to lift them, guide them, and help them in any way. So Martha, thank you so much for coming on board.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Scott. I'm very impressed.
So we're going to end the show with Scott's yeah, so we're going to put it on the screen.
Leadership America is creating champions of change through a culture of civility. In these times right now, I actually created this just before the pandemic, and then things really took a dive. So people are not kind, courteous, and respectful. And how do you get there? All these words that start with the letter C. Courage, commitment, character, compassion, not confrontation, but conversation. Credibility, continuity, creativity, consistency. And it all ends up with the last one, the perfect 10, the choice, making the good decisions every morning when you get up to move forward in your day. So then I decided I love to write things with rhyme, so poetry and what have you. So I wrote a creed This is creating champions of change through a culture of civility. And then courage, commitment, character, compassion, not confrontation, but conversation. And then the creed goes like this. Living life is not about me. A purposeful life is all about we. Sharing together all that we see, even though we might not always agree. Respectful and kind is forever key. Truthful and transparent is what we should be. Eradicating the anger and the hateful debris. Live not in a world where we need referees. Let us move forward in a place we foresee, diverse and inclusive for both he and she. Matters not religion nor race, faith is for thee. We must live in a world that's our home of the free. And so I think it kind of sums up who we are, what we're all about, and hopefully what we would like to be a part of every single day. And unfortunately, in this world today, it's not like that. So again, more C words, whether you're in the classroom, with your corporation, in a big company, in your community, or in this incredible country we all call home. We need to move forward in a positive, productive way. And we need to do it yesterday. So.
Well, thank you so much.
And thank you for letting me be a part of this. This is really great. And congratulations to all that you continue to do. Really, it's above and beyond. So I was honored to be a part of it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, so much. Mm-hmm. My name is Marie Diaz, and I am the Chief Visionary for CEO Clubs Impact. Until next time, bye.
Inspiring, visionary, entrepreneurial, dedicated, and with a spirit of giving, and Latina. Marie Diaz and CEO Clubs Impact are in the business of lifting, guiding, and leading others to success.